Hello, everyone. My name is Bryson Gordon, and I lead AI and industry marketing at Google Cloud. Today, we're going to talk about how data and machine learning can transform our understanding of customers within a privacy-centric world, and what that can enable for your marketing teams. Now, this session is built for the technical leaders in data and IT departments who work with marketing and media teams, and also for data-driven marketers focused on transforming the impact and efficacy of their storytelling. During the session, I'm going to be joined by Bethany Poole from Google's ads business and Ryan Mason, the director and head of DTC growth and strategy from Constellation Brands. All right, let's jump in. Let's actually start by taking stock of how far we've come. Not too long ago, we were in the era of one-to-many broadcast marketing. Now here, broad reach was the focus. Measurement was a challenge, and it was often difficult to assess the efficacy of your spend. Programmatic and search changed everything, really ushering in an era of precision marketing fed by rich data, targeted messaging, and more clarity around conversion signals, especially in the e-commerce and DTC space. But during this era, companies were largely using the cloud to replace their on-prem infrastructure versus driving real business transformation. Now, more recently, what we've seen with the leaders across industries is a focus on transformation clouds and a pivot from audience targeting to audience prediction through better, faster access to customer data and machine learning models that predict behaviors in high-value segments, learning and adapting and personalizing in near real time. This is where the cloud is moving. From an infrastructure investment only in IT to a transformation partner that IT and data teams enable for marketers. But we're also in an era of increased scrutiny and expectations. Consumers' concerns about how their data is collected, used, and shared are higher than ever. Last year, searches for online privacy increased by 50% globally. And in response, both technology companies and regulators are placing new limitations on what data may or may not be used. To be able to drive personalized marketing in this changing context, customer data needs to be collected and managed responsibly. And companies here are focusing on how they establish direct, first-party data relationships with their customers. Now, leading brands and data organizations understand that growth and trust are inseparable. Customers will vote with their wallets and their relationships. So establishing trust and the value of a data exchange with customers can translate into better user experiences while generating more revenue and marketing efficiency for brands. The Boston Consulting Group actually found that personalized and targeted messaging built on top of a foundation of first-party data can actually double revenue from ad placements. So as you get ready for this new context, there are three things to plan for. First, how are you going to collect first-party data, particularly if you will work in an industry without established direct relationships with customers? What app or DTC experiences can you establish to show the value of personalization to customers? Second, how are you approaching the consolidation and transformation of data so it can be an input and asset into machine learning models for segment creation, product recommendations, and customer service experiences, among other things? And third, unlocking data means every employee can be a data worker. What are the levels of data democratization that you're going to enable? And what tools like Looker can you activate to help put the right data into the right hands to fundamentally speed decision-making? Now at Google, many of our largest customers are solving for first-party data with a customer data platform built on Google Cloud. CDPs are most successful when they have four core characteristics. First, get all the data you can. Think enterprise-wide data, not just data from individual silos. For example, if you work in retail, how are you connecting merchandising, inventory, and marketing data to extract new insights? Second, You have to know that your customer is your customer. This is the idea of ID resolution. Often using deterministic or probabilistic matching, you can stitch together customer data from shopping, advertising, call center interactions, and other sources. All the data that customers have given your brand permission to collect, giving you a true 360 view of those customers. Third, enable your teams with AI and ML capabilities. And this needs to be made easy with platforms like Google Cloud's Vertex AI that can speed model development and deployment, layered with core principles of responsible AI to prevent biased models. And finally, the best CDPs are accessible, transforming employees into data workers and making data a cross-team conversation, not a siloed asset sitting in a single department. And if you're a marketer, marketing analytics offerings for BigQuery lower the barriers for trying out specific AI and ML use cases. For example, building on your existing investments with Google Ads and Google Marketing Platform can be a great starting point. And with that, and to talk to us more about this, I'm happy to welcome Bethany Poole from our ads marketing team to show us how Google Cloud and GMP enable powerful capabilities for marketers. Bethany.
Thanks, Bryson. I'm delighted to be joining you today. Something we talk a lot about in marketing at Google is the idea of readiness. And that's never been more true than it is at a time when we've all had to grapple with the disruptions in consumer behavior, supply chains, and in society. At Google, we think that for marketing to be ready for these kinds of challenges and for whatever comes next is really just about staying focused on two key priorities. The first is to create marketing that's agile and responsive enough to capture short-term opportunities. The second is to build long-term resilience for your business by rethinking how you collect, connect, and activate data across the organization. The good news is that these priorities don't have to be in conflict. And I'm going to share a few examples of how ads and clouds can help you do both at the same time. It's an understatement to say that COVID accelerated pre-existing digital trends. Analysts talk about seeing a decade of change happen in a few short months. And here's some of the things that we've seen since. Shoppers like the variety that going online has brought them. 81% said they've discovered new brands online during COVID. And even as stores reopen, 63% of consumers say they'll continue to seek out the best app experiences. And we've seen new behaviors emerge. 56% of US holiday shoppers last year plan to confirm that an item was in stock before they left home to buy it. This is the beginning of something entirely new and different. What we still call online doesn't just happen in online channels anymore. Because if someone uses their phone app to select curbside pickup, and are they an online or a brick and mortar customer? The truth is that question isn't relevant anymore. The real question is whether or not you can understand and react to whatever any customer is trying to do in any specific circumstance. Let's take an example of this in practice. Crate and Barrel uses Cloud's BigQuery tool to compile and prepare data sets that used to be siloed. They estimate that this allows them to draw on 10 times more sources of information than they did even just a few years ago. But they don't just compile this data. They use it to generate actionable insights and to influence a customer's next interaction. By plugging these insights into Google's marketing platform, Crate and Barrel's advertising has been more effective and they've doubled their return on ad spend. It's also helped transform their business. Among other things, they now produce personalized catalogs, run targeted and highly customized direct mailing campaigns, and improve customer experience at every step in the ordering process. With the kinds of changes we've already touched on, we can't forget the biggest change of them all, the shift from third-party cookies toward the first-party consumer consented data. In the long term, how successful any business will be depends on how well they can adapt to this shift. And we're already seeing some brands leaning in with the tools available today to drive long-term resilience by reaching consumers with relevant messaging at scale. Take Mondelez, one of the world's biggest snack food companies. They've used Google Cloud to organize nearly 1 trillion data points and to create a new consolidated structure for better creative optimization. Across their company, marketing, tech, creative, and media teams are using this structure to set shared objectives and align on how to best connect with consumers across channels. An example is their Don't Go Far for Hunger campaign launched in India. The advertising creative was generated dynamically based on 8 consumer passion points, like cricket or Game of Thrones, and then they combined it with other contextual elements like time of day or location. Mondelez generated 92,000 unique personalized assets, which drove a 50% rise in ad recall, a click-through rate of 2.5 times higher than the industry average. When they deployed this strategy at scale across all their markets, it's helped them outpace the rest of the sector and deliver double-digit growth. It's also the template for how Mondelez is reorganizing their entire long-term business strategy around building deeper, longer-lasting relationships with their customers. Getting the clearest possible picture of the needs and behavior of your customers is a priority that goes beyond the marketing department. Identifying the customers with the greatest lifetime value for your business can unlock huge growth and even help prioritize product and business decisions. But to do this, you have to be able to analyze the data spread across your organization, things like customer acquisition cost, your basket size at checkout, and long-term loyalty program participation. With Google Cloud Tools, it's easier than ever to bring all of this data together to understand your customers' value. And with Google Ads, you can reach the right audience at the right time with the right message. And so with Cloud and Ads together, you can be ready for today, for tomorrow, and for whatever comes next. Over to you, Bryson.
Thank you, Bethany. It's great to see the success that we are driving together for our customers. It's also important to understand that our offering is more than just Google Media data. As a business, you have a range of advertising partners, marketing vendors, and business applications, and we can help you integrate data from all of them, not just Google. Google Cloud can help you aggregate and manage data from across your Google Ads and other marketing applications by integrating it directly into BigQuery, where you can analyze and transform it with integrated AI and ML capabilities. You can then enable your marketing teams to speed decision-making and insights on a self-service basis using Looker, our BI and embedded analytics platform. Okay, to summarize, 3 things to walk away with here. 1, with connectors to hundreds of data sources, Google Cloud can help you build a CDP that will enable enterprise-wide data and real-time analytics, while enabling easier and faster deployments of AI to drive real business value. And the real Google magic can also come when you augment your own data with Google data and other public data sets. 2, the infrastructure you will be using to build this is Google Class Secure, with features like data encryption in use and at rest by default, compliance to privacy regulations across the world, and features like data loss prevent at scale. And 3, you're investing in a platform that'll be ready for whatever the future brings with Google's leading AI and ML and the ability to integrate with solutions of your choice. All right, now we're going to talk with one of our partners about how they are approaching first-party data and consumer closeness. DTC, direct to consumer, is such a pure form of marketing at the intersection of tech, data, and storytelling. And it brings so much of what we've been talking about to life. With that, it's my pleasure to welcome Ryan Mason, Director and Head of DTC Growth and Strategy at Constellation Brands, a Fortune 500 American producer and marketer of beer, wine, and spirits. Ryan, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Bryson. Looking forward to the conversation.
All right. Well, look, so we've been talking a lot about first-party data, and specifically how first-party data and machine learning are transforming marketing. So DTC, it feels like, and kind of what you do, growth marketing, is really at the tip of the spear here. How has Constellation been investing in this area for its own transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely right. We actually use that very same phrase, tip of the spear. We are about a year into a pretty strategic investment into DTC and digital commerce, a lot of which is focused on for the sole purpose of connecting with our consumers first. As you can imagine, being a big wholesale business, beer, wine, spirits, we interact with our consumer basically when they touch a product that comes out of a bottle. But now we can interact with our consumer on our websites, at our wineries and tasting rooms, at our distilleries, and have a seamless integrated experience across all of these digital touch points that did not exist even a year ago, 2 years ago for our business. So for the very first time, we're able to collect first party data, interact with our consumers on a one-to-one basis, and do that at scale through direct to consumer investment, which we're really excited about.
It's amazing how quickly that's changed. I mean, you mentioned only in the last year you've seen that fundamental pivot and transformation. So it sounds like you're seeing a lot of benefits from this investment in first party data, this investment in DTC. Would love to understand more about how are you seeing those investments actually change and impact how you're approaching your marketing investment and also how you're approaching measurement.
Yeah, absolutely. So to your first point, I think there's a couple quotes out there that we've seen over the course of the pandemic period, an acceleration in e-commerce and direct-to-consumer behavior of about 10 years of growth in 3 months in terms of consumer adoption in the category. And we're not really seeing anything too different, right? We're seeing actually increased levels of adoption for direct-to-consumer selling, direct-to-consumer browsing, product trial, customer acquisition through digital channels instead of brick and mortar channels. So we're really reaping the benefits of that as well in a very, very quick manner, to your point. And it's changing the way we think about marketing and commercialization as a whole for new products. We are able to do limited test runs on our website of small drops and small batches of products to increase trial and get consumers in the door. After we can scale that, if it goes successfully, we can scale into wholesale. We can push it into our 3-tier system without having to do an upfront commitment of thousands and thousands of cases. We can do a small direct-to-consumer shipment and see what consumers are reacting to. So it's not just marketing, it's not just consumer data, it's everything that involves product and growth for us. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I think typically when people think about the CDP space, they tend to focus almost exclusively on how it's going to impact marketing, how it's going to impact media. But it sounds like Constellation is going well beyond that in sort of the work that you're doing on this, into thinking about new products, innovating around sort of new ways to go engage with customers, but also sort of think about ways to test things out before you go put it out into the mass market. I think that's fascinating, Ryan. Well, Let me ask you this. Like, let's roll up the sleeves for a moment here. Talk to me a little bit about how have you actually built this? Like, how have you approached data management? How have you approached data collection? How did you work with Google and Google Cloud on sort of pulling this whole thing together?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Google Cloud has been a pivotal piece of technology that we've basically built our entire ecosystem around. We're orbiting around BigQuery at the center, which is our data warehouse, and we're partnering with upwards of 15 new technology partners that are new to the organization as of a year ago. We're built everything from a commerce standpoint. We're built on Shopify Plus. From a technology integration standpoint, as I mentioned, we're using BigQuery. We're processing all of our website analytics data through Google Analytics. We're using Google Ads and the Google Marketing Platform to do all sorts of great stuff that I'm sure your listeners are doing already. But I think the biggest thing for us has been business intelligence and analytics through Looker, which is, of course, another Google product that sits right on top of our BigQuery database. And we're able to do a whole host of things, like answering really complex questions like, in this zip code in California, how many people have bought a red blend from thisbrand.com, which is one of 15 that we have in market, in the last 6 months? Why are they buying it? What is the net promoter score of those customers? And can we push more into market and wholesale? So we're doing really interesting things with a pretty robust technology stack, at the center of which is BigQuery and Looker. So we're really excited about that.
Well, let's talk to me a little bit more about Looker, because I think one of the things that is interesting in terms of what you're doing at Constellation Brands is it's about putting data in the hands of more people. Data isn't just for the data scientists. It's not just for the data teams. It's about really sort of democratizing access to that data and frankly doing it in a way where almost every employee can be a data worker in some regard. How are you
Absolutely.
thinking about that? And like, how does Looker underpin that strategy and approach?
I think you nailed it. So we've built our team in that manner. We do not have silos for data scientists or analytics engines and people to work in corners, right? So we actually have it at front and center. We've got a Looker dashboard that shows the health of our business, and anyone on the team can look at it. So the growth team that I manage is customer acquisition, it's customer retention, it's analytics and insights, which manages Looker, but it's so much more than that because it's basically an evangelist platform for the rest of the organization to come in and look just by logging into the web-based interface and say, how is the business doing? I have a question. I don't need to go to an analytics team and have it translated 30 different ways and then get a report back. I can go and answer it myself because
Yep.
Looker is web-based. It's not SQL query based, so anyone with limited knowledge can do it. So that's kind of what we're trying to build. We're trying to build data literacy about our business and get insights to anyone who wants them.
That's outstanding. Well, one of the other things we've been talking about here, Ryan, is data privacy and how that pivot to first party data is really critical as you start to look around and see things like third party cookies slowly but surely going away. How are you thinking about that transition at Constellation Brands?
Yeah, that's a big one, and we fully haven't cracked that nut, so to speak, and I don't think many marketers have. But at the center of everything we do is the customer and the consumer, and that comes along with privacy, right? So we respect everything. If someone wants to have their files deleted, we'll absolutely do that. We have to be compliant with CCPA. We're actually compliant with GDPR. So it's something that it's at the core of our strategy. On top of that, with cookie depreciation and everything we're seeing with updates to software, we're actually trying to build our own level of CDP that stitches together customer IDs from our own records that are voluntarily shared with us. So if someone visits the tasting room in California and does a winery tour of Robert Mondavi, is excited about it, and they end up buying a case and subscribing to our club membership, and they get a case every couple of months, we can stitch that customer ID through voluntary sharing with us to an online transaction that they make 3 months later. And so we can do things like that without relying on the cookie-based system or without relying on other tracking technologies. So we're trying to build it in-house. And we actually benefit from having what I would call a brick and mortar footprint with some of our tasting rooms or distilleries, which is helping us do that.
I think it's really interesting. I've seen that trend with some of the more sophisticated marketing and sort of growth organizations out there, where it's a pivot towards how do you begin to build your own identity graph? How do you start to think about ID resolution in very sort of bespoke and specific ways that are sort of grounded in the interactions you have with your customers because of all the touch points that you get to have.
Yeah.
All right, one more thing, Ryan. So we've got an audience here that is mostly made up of people who work in IT or data leadership roles, but work with marketing and media teams. Like, what piece of advice would you give them on how to best partner with people like you on data and machine learning transformation?
Yeah, I think it's as simple as what we were just talking about is try to improve literacy and data literacy across the organization through sharing a platform by which anyone can interact with. Because often, and in previous roles and in previous experiences, as a business user or a marketing user, if I have a question about analytics or data management, it's sometimes just this unspoken barrier of, all right, well, I'm going to have to submit a request to the data team, or I'm going to have to kind of go through whatever the protocol is to get that information. If you kind of break those barriers down, and I'm not saying never talk to anybody, but if you break those barriers down and you allow someone to log into a system that's not hyper technical, that can be used, like Looker, for example, with limited SQL knowledge, if you allow them to log in and try to answer questions for themselves, I think it's a really important way to connect. And in fact, we're having more integration and more touch points with the data teams that are cross-functional to us in direct to consumer because of that connection. If that connection didn't exist, if we didn't have Looker, I'm not sure we would be talking as much. So I think to go back to it, to keep it simple, is create an open portal for that to happen. And that doesn't just mean communication and protocol. It just means, allow someone to go in, get their hands dirty, and answer questions for themselves. I think it's important.
That's fantastic. All right. With that, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. And to everyone else, thank you for joining the session. Bethany, thank you for being here, and have a great Google Cloud Next.